You're listening to Satellite Sisters.
What's a satellite sister?
The person you call when the best thing in your life happens or the worst.
The person that gets you up, gets you going, and gets you through.
And every once in a while, changes your mind.
This podcast is part pep talk, part weekly check-in.
Like grabbing coffee with a friend.
Thanks for being here. Welcome to the Satellite Sisterhood.
You're listening to Satellite Sisters. We're glad you're here today. I'm Leanne Dolan in Pasadena, California. I'm a writer and producer. I'm here with my sister, Liz Dolan. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Leanne. I'm Liz Dolan in Santa Monica, California. I'm a marketer and a podcaster, and I'm here at home with my dog, Hooper. And how about you, Julie?
Hey, this is Julie Dolan. I'm in Dallas in my closet all by myself. I think my dog is up against the closet door wanting to get it and bust his way in.
Today's Satellite Sister is going to be a little bit different. We decided to take the entire hour and devote it to one topic, and that is death by suicide. I know. It's not going to be it's not going to be the tidbits and the tips to clip that we usually do or the Tuesday trends, but we thought this was important enough to talk about, and we wanted to devote the whole hour to it. Our guest today is a friend of mine, Charlotte Maya. She has written a new memoir called Sushi Tuesdays, and the subtitle is A Memoir of Love, Loss, and Family Resilience. Charlotte lost her husband, Sam, 15 years ago to suicide. She was a mom living in La Cañada, California, a nice suburb. She had 2 little kids. She was a practicing lawyer at the time. And one day she came home and she discovered that her husband had died by suicide, and she had to completely recalibrate her entire life. Her memoir is so open and so honest. I was really, really blown away when I read it. I thought, now I finally have some answers, because if you know people that have died by suicide and you try to put yourself in their position, you almost can't do it. The people that are left behind, like, I can't imagine what it would be like if my husband, or my son, or my daughter, or my sister died by suicide. Charlotte takes you into the seconds, minutes, hours, days, months, and years after that event. And, all they went through for their family to end up on the other end, healthy and relatively happy now. So we're looking forward to welcoming Charlotte and to talking to her about her experiences. She also writes a lot about suicide now. She has a wonderful website and blog and newsletter. And so she's become an expert as such. And we're going to talk to her about that too. But Liz, we had some listeners who wanted to comment before the show about how suicide has affected them.
Right. Not surprisingly, Leanne. I mean, last week when you posted in the Satellite Sisters Facebook group that this would be the subject of this week's episode, and we were spending the whole episode on it, we did get a lot of comments from members of the group about their own experiences with suicide. Kathy wrote, 13 years ago, I almost lost my husband. Frightening now what he went through, what I went through, and more. He is still here, though, and doing good. So that's great. Becky wrote, I'm looking forward to this. Thank you for doing this. I'm lucky to still have my son, but almost lost him once. Wow. He's doing well now, but it's always a fear.
I bet.
I bet.
Yeah. Yep.
Terry wrote, there was a time I was on suicide watch with my son who was about 20 and was refusing help. It's such a hopeless feeling to watch loved ones and friends struggle. And sometimes there are no signs. I'm happy to say my son got help and is 37 and doing awesome. And then Amy, this is more recent, Amy wrote, thank you. This is such a hard topic to navigate, and one that is often only spoken about in hushed tones. Exactly, Amy. We want to ask Charlotte about that. She said, our family lost our 27-year-old nephew late last year. It's so different than anything we've ever had to deal with. Yes, we're hoping Charlotte can give us some insight into that, Amy.
Oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, Amy. All right, when we return, we're going to have Charlotte Maya with us, so please stay with us. You know we love Green Chef. It's the #1 meal kit for eating well, with dinners that work for you, not the other way around. Liz is our Green Chef aficionado. Liz, what is on the menu this week at your place?
I think officially I'm a Green Chef, Leon. And as the Green Chef, just 2 nights ago, I made the Cuban chicken with chimichurri. You got some red bell peppers in there, snap peas, cabbage, pepitas, cotija cheese. Delicious. Highly recommend.
Oh, Liz, it sounds like you're really shaking off the winter blues there with some delicious, easy to follow recipes. Is
You
that
bet.
true? All
You
right.
bet. It's exactly what I'm doing, Leon.
Well, we do like the Green Chef meals because they do come packed with flavor, right? You can bring a lot of flavor to your table this spring with Green Chef because they're wholesome, they're elevated, they feature seasonal organic produce and unique farm fresh ingredients. I mean, that chimichurri, Liz, you're not making that on your own. You're only making it with Green Chef.
It's way too elevated for me to invent on my own. Thank you, Green Chef.
Have you done a couple of those fast and fit recipes?
Yes, I love them. Sometimes I make those at lunchtime instead, Leon. It's good.
That's a great idea. All right. Well, if you want to be a Green Chef like Liz, here's what you do. Go to greenchef.com/sisters60 and use code sisters60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. That's greenchef.com/sisters60 and use code sisters60 to get 60% off plus free shipping. Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well. Julie, I understand that you just ordered a new, beautiful ceramic coated piece of kitchenware from Caraway. And I'm very excited to hear not only what you chose, but what chic color you picked to elevate your kitchen. What's happening there in Dallas, Jewel?
Okay, Leon, you told me how much you love your Caraway Home saute pan.
Yes.
So I ordered a Caraway Home saute pan in navy blue.
Ooh.
Just think how beautiful that's going to look in my kitchen. Isn't that pop of color? And you know what I was thinking, Leon? Like, why not get a new pan, right? Why not get new pans? Okay. Why am I using those same old pans? Let's get something fresh and springy and color coded. Okay. And elevate my whole kitchen. So that's what I did.
It's true. I got the full set of the high quality ceramic coated kitchenware, all the pots and pans. I was like, this is fantastic. Why have I waited so long to get new pans? I mean, I got married 30 years ago. That's probably the last time I know.
I know. Those pans are worn out. Get some new pans and pots. Yes.
I know. And you know what's great? I mean, first of all, we have a great offer. So you can save 10% off the full suite of Caraway products, from their internet famous cookware to their newly launched food storage set, which is very, very, very chic looking. But they're made without any toxic materials like PFAS, PTFE, PFOA. I don't know what any of those things are, but they're hard to pronounce chemicals, and I don't want to cook with them. And they have a naturally slick surface, the Caraway Home ceramics, which means minimal oil or butter. So honest to goodness, my eggs in the morning, they just slide right off the pan. I love it. Thank you so much, Caraway, for supporting Satellite Sisters. And here is how our listeners can get this great deal. Visit carawayhome.com/satsisters to take advantage of this limited time offer of 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusive for our listeners. So visit carawayhome.com/satsisters or use code satsisters at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. Do you have anxious thoughts? Are you restless at night, or do you not feel your best self? Making sure we feel our best should be a top priority. And by spending a few minutes with Calm each day, you can be sure you're taking the necessary time to prioritize yourself. We love the Calm app here at Satellite Sisters. We do the guided meditations. We enjoy the sleep stories. We like the relaxing music tracks. And you've heard Liz talk about how beneficial those daily movement sessions are. Liz, how are your movements going this week? You still doing those?
Daily moves, Leon. Yeah, because my favorite part is you get to pick the body part. Like, I'm having some shoulder, arm stiffness. Boom. Calm has a specific daily move for that, or stretching out the legs and the ankles. Yeah, Calm has everything I need to just get on the right track, Leanne. It just helps you get on and stay on the right track.
Right. They help you stress less, sleep more, and live a happier, healthier life. And over 100 million people around the world use Calm. So even if you've never meditated before, you'll get the support you need to reduce stress, improve focus, and uplift your mood. So here's what you do if you want to experience Calm. Go to calm.com/satsisters Satellite, and you'll get a special offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription, and new content is added every week. That's right. Satellite Sisters listeners get an exclusive offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/satellite. And Calm is CALM, calm.com/satellite for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. Calm, it's got everything you need for a happier, healthier you. We're back. We're the Satellite Sisters, Leanne, Liz, and Julie here. We're so happy to welcome Charlotte Maya to Satellite Sisters. We've told you about her memoir, Sushi Tuesday. Thank you for being on the show, Charlotte.
Leanne, thanks so much for having me.
You know, we're going to talk about your specific experience, what you write so movingly about in Sushi Tuesday, but we're also going to open the conversation up at the end because you've done so much writing and talking about the subject of suicide. I don't want to say you're an expert in it, but how do you refer to yourself when you think about this?
I refer to myself as a widow. The lived experience is my expertise, and I just really care about talking about this subject. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in this country. It's second for the age group 25 to 34, which is horrifying.
It's horrifying.
Wow, that is horrifying.
But we don't like to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing we know helps is talking about it. So
okay.
that's
So
where
we're going
I
to talk
start.
about it today.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's start by talking about your husband, Sam, who died 15
Yeah.
years ago by suicide. Charlotte, what was your family like before his death? How would you have described your family life?
I would have described our family life as pretty unremarkable. We had 2 kids. They were 6 and 8. We had a white picket fence. We had a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. I mean, it was a pretty domestic, happy life. We had a nice marriage, and we didn't fight about things. I was totally surprised by his suicide. There were things I could look back at in retrospect and recognize in a different way, which is also why I think we need a fluency around the subject of suicide, sort of in the same way that we know about physical health. When we talk about physical health, if we can talk about mental health and in such a natural way, I think I might have recognized some of the signs sooner.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think Sam was going through at the time? What was he going through? He had some physical issues. What else was he going through?
Sam had back pain from the time he was 13. So in some ways, it had always been a part of our life together. I had never known him without back pain. And at 41, I don't think he could even remember living without back pain anymore. He had job stress. But, if you have a job, you have job stress.
Right.
If you don't have a job, then you really have job stress.
Mm-hmm.
He had lost a couple pounds over the summer, but not, like 5 or 10 pounds, not like crazy. And who doesn't want to lose 5 or 10 pounds? I don't know anyone in their 40s who doesn't want to lose 5 or 10 pounds.
Right.
And so these are all things I could look back later and go, And then another thing, the night before he died, he had his our will and trust out on the counter. And that can be a sign, but I was a trust and estates attorney. So I read these things routinely, and it didn't faze me at all. And in fact, our will and trust at the time said everything goes to Danny, our firstborn, and any other children we have in equal shares. And I thought it would be nice to revise it to put Jason in by name, because by then we had 2 kids. And so I didn't even ask him why he had it out on the counter. I saw him reading it and I went, oh, hey, I've been meaning to get that out. Didn't even enter my mind that he would have been reading it for a different purpose.
Why would it? Really, why would it?
Right?
It's
crazy.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably the question people ask you a million times. Did you have any idea how deeply troubled he was? I think as someone who wasn't involved, it's like you want a sign like, well, surely there must have been signs that you missed.
I would say that that's true, but I missed them because I didn't know to look for them.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I just feel like it's so important to have honest conversations about this topic. When I arrived home that day and the policeman and priest met me, they told me, that was the day.
I'm sorry, Charlotte. I have to say I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. It's they said, the policeman said, we will tell the children that their father died. But you have to tell them how.
Mm-hmm.
And we recommend that you tell them the truth because you do not want them to find out from somebody else.
Mhm.
And at a time when nothing made sense, that made sense to me. So honesty and transparency have really guided my journey forward. We can't solve the problem of suicide by not talking about it.
Right.
And now it was the hardest thing I have ever done. The children were 6 and 8.
Oh,
Yeah, we fit in one chair. And so I scooped them up and I did tell them the truth. But
how long do you think it took them to really understand, like in terms of years?
I think
what
we're
had
still
gone?
really trying to understand in some ways, but your point is a good one. It I would say was different for each child. The 8-year-old refused to say what we called the D words, dead and daddy, for
Yep.
years. For years, until I would say high school, really. The 6-year-old wanted to talk about dead daddy all the time. So as a single parent, this was obviously sort of a quandary. Single parenting is the absolute hardest thing in the world. And so just like hearts out to all the single parents who might be listening. It's really, really hard. But the children know they can count on me for honest answers to life's hardest questions. And that relationship piece is the most important thing.
That
Do you
must be
think that's the
super
way?
powerful.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Liz. Yeah. Do you
No,
think that was the way you were before? Were you that honest with them before, or was that new after Sam's death?
I've always been pretty transparent with my kids. That's a great question because I hadn't ever thought about that. I'm not sure that it was a big shift now that you asked that question, taking what the policeman told me. Maybe why it resonated so much for me is that it was a real affirmation of how I communicated with my kids. I mean, obviously when they're little, I used little words, dead, daddy, sick, sad. Now they're 22 and 24, so we can have much more nuanced conversations. The 22-year-old is a senior in college and a psychology major. So we have amazing discussions about physiology and depression and mental illness. And now he's teaching me.
Yeah.
So the conversation continues. I don't know. There's still days when I drive past the intersection where Sam died and it takes my breath away. Like, this is my life. This happened. But that's the thing about grief is there's no like end date. There's no expiration date or date certain on which you can say, okay, now I'm done grieving. Done, fixed. It's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Sam was 41 when he died. And I just can only imagine what it will be like for the children when they're 41 and then 42.
Yeah. Charlotte, in your book, Sushi Tuesdays, it's so beautifully written. The first couple of chapters I felt were so particularly powerful because you literally describe like the seconds, the minutes, the hours, and the days after his death in detail. And it was a really powerful way to just lay out how your life changed in an instant. And I feel like as the reader, I felt every second of that first month after you heard about your husband. Did you feel every second? Do you remember it? I mean, you recall it in the book, but at the time, like, were you understanding what you were living through and what were your emotions? I mean, beyond sadness and shock.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's, grief and trauma sort of have this way of telescoping time. And so there were so many details that I will never forget and that were just in sharp relief. But then there are also huge gaping holes in my memory as well. I don't know, for example, so the policeman, the policewoman, and the priest were in the driveway, and the policeman and the priest took me into the house first to talk. And the policewoman said, I'll stay with the boys. And I don't know when or how the children and the dog got from the car into the house. Now I look back at that and I think, wow, what a bad mom. I had no idea, right, where they were. And so memory is a slippery thing, and writing a memoir, requires, there were things I went back and looked at, like emails, and sometimes I would even ask friends, but those those early moments were so intense that it is almost impossible to forget a lot of those details. And I tried to structure the memoir using time in that way, because grief feels almost like a newborn of its own. You know how when your baby is born, you first count his hours or her hours,
Right. Oh, that's
her
interesting.
in hours and then days, and then they're
Yes.
like, oh, the baby is a week, and now she's a month, and then now she's 27. So you know what I mean? It's kind of like it's a baby of its own. Trauma is kind of like a baby of its own. So I just tried to structure the book in that way intentionally, to give the reader that feeling of how intense those early days are. And then it kind of loosens its grip over time, and it becomes easier to breathe.
Right. Well, it definitely gripped me. I think there was a new level of understanding about what, I mean, you went through suicide, but even any sudden death of a spouse or a child, drug overdose or anything, it must feel like that intensity. And then you were sad, but what else did you feel? I mean, you have a lot of, you admit to a lot of anger in the book.
Yes, I was sad. I was angry. I was confused. I was terrified that I was going to be ostracized because of how Sam died. But what I found was actually the opposite, that people wanted to share. They wanted to hear. So Sam died on a Saturday, and on Monday I took the kids to school, and I as I was walking them to their little classrooms, people were averting their eyes and kind of giving me space. And but I thought, well, okay, this is where it begins, right? Everyone is going to just sort of ostracize us, and I would be alienated from my beautiful community that I loved so much. So I squatted down, I looked them in the eyes and said, last as long as you can. And as soon as you're ready to come home, let me know. Let the teacher know, and I will come get you. And I didn't know whether they'd last 5 minutes or half an hour or the whole day. And they ended up lasting the whole day. But as I turned then to walk back home, I thought, okay, here I go. And I was met with hug after prayer, after words of comfort, and tears upon tears. And I was held. They held me.
Oh.
And over the course of our journey, I was just very transparent, as we talked about, and people kept saying, you have to write the book. You have to write the book. So what I feared was isolation, and what I found was connection. And that's part of what I'm hoping Sushi Tuesdays will provide, is some connection, the beginnings to a greater conversation, because there's so many suicide stories that aren't shared because we are so afraid.
Right.
Charlotte, this is Liz. I want to ask you specifically about that, because I read that sentence. I was terrified that I would be ostracized after Sam's death. And I want to know more about what that fear was. So it was just that people would be afraid to face you, that they just would not know how to interact with you. That was your fear?
Well, we don't talk about suicide, and there's so much shame and stigma around mental health and suicide, that that I was afraid of being blamed. Of course, I felt a ton of guilt. I will say, to be honest, it was a lot easier to forgive Sam than it was to forgive myself.
Wow.
Oh,
wow. So hard.
Oh.
Yeah. You also wrote that, if you had a chance to rewrite his obituary, you might choose to use the word suicide now. You didn't originally. And so how has your thought process changed on that? Because as you said at the top of this conversation, if we don't talk about suicide, we're never going to be able to get to the root of what it is at all.
Right. Yeah, I used died suddenly, which suddenly serves as sort of a euphemism in obituaries. I have a lot of hope from the fact that I have seen words like suicide or overdose appear specifically now in obituaries, because we can't solve a problem by ignoring it.
Right.
And when we face into it, when we say the word out loud, and it's a hard word to say, but it's harder to lose someone than to say the word. So I just think that these conversations are very healing. We joke in my house, we don't hide the skeletons in our closets. We display them on the walls and on top of the piano.
Oh my God.
You've had a long journey to get there. Right?
Yes.
Yes. You know, Charlotte, you talked about all the comfort you got from your community right after this happened. Tony wrote to us at Satellite Sisters, and she lost a close friend to suicide. And she wanted to ask about what was the best kind of support for the survivors in that situation. What would you say helped you the most?
Oh, Tony, this is a great question. And thank you for asking it. And I'm sorry that you're living this. I would say everybody has a gift. I was amazed. I would just say, yes, I need help. I was amazed at what people would show up with and bring and do. So of course, food, casseroles, hugs, showing up with ice cream or whatever, casseroles, lasagna, all those things. I had a friend who noticed that I was consistently late to school. So she showed up on my doorstep for months at 7:45 exactly with her own 2 children every morning to get us on time to school. She'd walk in and say, okay, shoes, socks, homework, lunches, here we go. And she was unbelievable. And I didn't need a dozen moms on my doorstep to usher us up to school. I just needed one, and she was there. I had another friend who would sort through my mail, and she would pull out all the bills. She would write, this was in 2007, so we still wrote checks. So she would write everything on the check except sign it. She would put a stamp on the envelope. She would paperclip the check to the stub and the envelope. And all I had to do was sign it and stick it in the envelope. And then she would actually take it to the mail. I would just say, if you have a gift, if you have a passion, if you have any ideas at all, that your friend needs your help in that way. I just had, it's an outpouring of love. And so for people who are healing, I would also say, if someone asks you how they can help or if they can help, just say yes and let them figure out how, because I needed everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I love that in the book, one of the devices you use is to call all particularly the women, the school mom friends, Janes. You don't name them by name, but you were just refer to them as the Janes. And it just made me think we all need Janes in our life at some point, there's going to be a moment when we're all going to have to say yes to the Janes in our lives, and we should just let that help in. And you illustrated that so beautifully in Sushi Tuesdays. I was thinking
a Sushi Tuesday.
Yeah, I know. That was going to be my next question. Yes, go for it. Now is the time to explain the title, Charlotte. What is a Sushi Tuesday?
Sushi Tuesdays was basically my day for self-care. I had a yoga class that I really liked on Tuesday mornings, and then my therapist had a recurring slot open up on Tuesdays. So Tuesdays became my day for self-care. I called it my Charlotte Shabbat, and I didn't make appointments with JDs or CPAs or BFDs. It was just Charlotte, her yoga instructor, her therapist, and sometimes I would take myself out to sushi for lunch, party of one. It was too much pressure to make an appointment for coffee even. It was just, it was just while the kids were in school. So as a practical matter, it was 9 to 3 or so. And so that was my Sushi Tuesdays. And I just really listened to what did Charlotte need for her own self-care? Did I need to crawl back in bed and cry? Because that's real. And if I did, that's what I would do. Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to just sit and meditate? What does Charlotte need? Do I need to, pound out my rage somewhere? What does Charlotte need today for her own self-care? And that was my Sushi Tuesdays. The kids were little. They didn't care about eating sushi. So it was perfect.
Right. For Charlotte.
How long did it take you to get there to Sushi Tuesdays? Just if people are sort of in the, newly have experienced a new loss. I mean, I know grief has many timelines, but for you, when did Sushi Tuesdays emerge as like, okay, I can do this and I need to do this? Do you recall?
That's a great question, because it sort of happened gradually. I would say it was probably about 3 months in when I recognized what was happening.
Oh, it seems fast. I mean, that's it. Well, I guess you have no choice when you have little kids, right?
Totally. It was the mommy channel 24/7. Even I didn't want to hear what I had to say anymore.
Right, because there's just still being 6 and 8-year-olds. They,
Yes.
right? Yes.
You're right. 6 and 8-year-olds who are grieving in very different
Yes.
ways. And
Yes.
exactly. And so, children are really good at sort of titrating how much they can take. So, you have an intense conversation and then they're like, okay, mommy, what's for dinner? Let's read, which is really refreshing.
Right. Yeah. That's right. I don't need to talk about this anymore. What's for dinner? Yeah.
Listen, the dog is still pooping on the lawn, so somebody's got to get that done.
Life moves on.
Charlotte, I was thinking back when I met you at St. Francis. That's the high school that our sons went to together, and we were on the parent board together.
Yeah.
So it was after Sam's death. I did not know you before that time period. And I remember we were both on the PTA essentially. And I remember you came and I was like, "Ooh, look at her. She's really pulled together. She's a lawyer. She's got that great haircut and wow, super sharp looking." And then somebody told me your story. And like, this is what happened to Charlotte's husband. And I, of course, was stunned. What is that like for you? Knowing that out in the community, your story enters the room before you do.
Well, wow. That's a great question. I don't think I knew my story did enter the room before I did.
It wasn't gossip. It was just people sort of filling in your backstory.
Totally. Well, what I feel like I experience more often is people not knowing my story. Like you say, I got the bob haircut and for me, I feel like it's a reminder to me that everybody has stuff going on.
Yes.
We don't always know.
Yes.
You never know what people are going through.
Right.
Yeah. And it is surprising and not always in a good way, just what people are carrying. And I think it's just a reminder to be tender in those spaces because we really don't know what people are holding and carrying.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're remarried now. We're sort of skipping ahead. You have a blended family. There is a lot in the book about the challenges of that. So I encourage people to pick up Sushi Tuesday because it's not like, well, look at me now. No. There is a lot of, there's a lot of struggle, a lot of therapy, a lot of back and forth for years. But where is your family now emotionally? And what's it like for them to have you write this memoir?
Oh my gosh, these are all great questions. When Tim and I first got married, I accidentally fell in love with the most eligible widower in town.
It's true. He's a handsome guy. I mean, I'll say it. You score it, Charlotte. He's a good looking man.
He's good looking, but he's also incredibly kind.
Yes.
He's just plain good. And so I really was not expecting that. And when Tim and I first got married, we had 4 pretty young kids. They were 9, 11, 14, and 17. And only the youngest one was excited about our getting married. And he,
oh no,
even he changed his mind from time to time. So we were operating at a 12.5% approval rating. I would say, but at this point today in 2023, we're hovering in the high 90s. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's certainly a road. When we first got married, our oldest was a senior in high school, and there's a moment that our photographer actually captured, and I was leaning toward him, and I know what I was saying to him was, I promise I am never going to try to replace your mother, Debbie, but I do hope that at some point we will have our own thing. And Gregory got married in October.
wow.
And in advance of the wedding, he asked me to choose a song for the mother-son dance. Which is
Okay, now I'm getting choked up.
Now we're all crying. All of us are crying.
Charlotte, thanks a lot.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
So it is a journey that continues, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of humor, a lot of humility, a lot of a good bottle of wine doesn't hurt. But we just keep showing up and just keep loving each other. It's really the only way forward.
Did writing this memoir take you to a new place in your relationship with some of the people in your life, like your sons, your stepsons?
That's a great question. I feel like writing the memoir was learning the craft.
Okay.
I was a little naive about how much it takes to write a book. So, Leon,
Well, that's the best place to start. Like, how hard could it be? Everybody seems to write one. That's a good starting spot.
Yeah,
that overconfidence. Yeah.
I,
And you're a lawyer. You write stuff.
I can do stuff. I've read 12 hundreds, thousands of books, so I should be able to write a book, but that didn't turn out to be true. So I hired a book coach. And so I feel like with writing the memoir itself was really learning the craft, learning about story structure, learning about character arc. And so the kids are really cute. They are all very proud of me. Only one has read the book from beginning to end, but anything that had the kids in it, I ran by them first. Most of those had been published in the blog at some level anyway. But they're very cute. They are all very excited and proud. And I think it's a little strange for kids to see mom grow up. I feel like I finally gone from, stay-at-home mom to someone with a career of her own. And it's really exciting for me, but the kids seem a little mystified by it, but pleased.
Yeah. Well, I have 6 books, and one of my sons has never read any. So don't worry, it's not.
I bet they are secretly. I bet they are very proud of you. That's
I'm sure.
Yes, I bet they are.
Yes,
But with the book, Charlotte, it makes you even more of a resource for other people who have experienced suicide in their life, and so that's a lot to take on. It's one thing to put your story on a page. It's another thing to put yourself out there. And has any part of that been hard?
It's certainly not an expertise I ever would have anticipated having. It's a club that nobody wants to be in, but as I always say, thank goodness for it, because we are not alone. And that connection changes everything. And we can't always fix everything that happens in life, but we can connect with each other, and that brings great healing.
Yeah.
Charlotte, you've added to our awareness about this. We had a listener, Jill, who wrote to us and said that for her, it seems like suicide is happening so often these days. And I think you touched on this a little while ago. But she was trying to calibrate. Is it because we know so many people through our internet connections, or the numbers of suicides actually going up?
I think it's both. I have, the CDC just came out with a new report on teenagers and mental health, and the statistics for teenage girls are pretty horrifying.
Yeah, it was very grim for teenage girls.
Yes. And so I just feel like this was a story that was demanding to be told, and people are struggling and suffering. And if we can bring some daylight to some of that, I just really believe that we can save lives. So yeah, it's not the cause I would have anticipated, but obviously I feel very passionate about it. I have a lot of hope in that new National Lifeline 988, like 911, but 988 that you can call or text 24/7. Just the fact of having that 988 lifeline out there, I think invites people to ask for help. And it lets people know that you're not the only one who is struggling here. And certain of our communities are even at higher risk. Our LGBTQ plus children, our military. We have work to do. So I'm definitely willing to roll up my sleeves and do the work, because it matters.
When you read about, there have been a couple of high profile suicides. I'm thinking of Twitch or Anthony Bourdain's.
Yeah.
Does that trigger you, Charlotte? Does that bring up something new, or and should we look for that in the people around us, that they who have experienced suicide, that some reading about Twitch may trigger themselves?
It breaks my heart every time.
Yeah.
And I look forward to a day when these are not conversations that we have to have, when we're able to be really honest with each other about how things are really going and what we're feeling and what we're afraid of. There was a great op-ed in the New York Times. Oh my gosh, I'm losing the name right now. And he was talking about his best friend's struggle with mental health, and his friend had opened up to him about his struggles, and he said that of all the feelings that he is left with, guilt and remorse were not one of them, because his friend had reached out. They knew he was struggling. Everybody was together. He had his team, he had his doctors, he had his medication, and depression still took his life.
Still
it's important.
won.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's important to understand suicide as an illness. It's not a crime. It is an illness. And how we talk about it matters. So we don't say committed suicide anymore. That triggers me more than a lot of things. It's an illness. So commit has that connotation of being a crime. So we say things instead, died by suicide or suicided as a verb, which sounds a little awkward, but we can practice this. I would rather have a glitchy conversation about suicide than no conversation at all. But how we talk about it matters. But in this article in the Times, I wish I could remember who wrote it because it was really beautiful. But he said he didn't feel guilt and regret about how he had been able to show up. And so even though his friend had died, he didn't die without knowing that the people around him were fighting for him as well.
Oh, that's powerful.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
One
Very
of my cousins, Sam's cousins, Carol, died from breast cancer the year after Sam did. She was only 33. And at the funeral, another cousin said, he was really, of course, we were all totally brokenhearted. And he said, Carol was fighting for her life and Sam just threw his away. And it made me so mad because as I told him, Carol had doctors and medication and chemo and people showing up to drive carpool and bringing her lasagna, and Sam was fighting alone. He was fighting just as hard, but he was fighting alone. And what if he had let us into the fight? What if he had let just one person? What if he had let me into the fight with him? Would it have made a difference? I like to think it would.
Mhm.
Charlotte, thank you so much for being here today. Just the book is Sushi Tuesdays. It's a beautiful memoir. Your website is an amazing resource for people who are, looking for some comfort and some answers. You also have a newsletter. You're very busy over there at Sushi Tuesdays. Do you still get to have sushi by yourself anymore? Are you still doing that? I'm worried now. I'm worried you're too busy.
We wish that for you.
To be
You
honest,
need that self-care.
yes, I do. Most Tuesdays I do keep to myself still, because you're right. Self-care is for everybody.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Charlotte
you,
Maya,
Charlotte.
for being with
Thank
us
you.
today. I just appreciate your honesty.
Oh, thank you all. The pleasure has been mine.
We'd like to welcome a new sponsor to Satellite Sisters. We're so happy to have Avoya Travel on board. And you know why? Because planning a vacation is hard and planning the wrong vacation is even worse. So with Avoya Travel, you can search for your dream vacation from one of the many top travel companies they are partnered with. They combine the ease of an online search with the expertise and personalized service of an independent vacation planner. Plus, secure exclusive deals and extras so you get more out of every vacation. Julie, have you been to the Avoya travel site? Have you picked out a dream cruise tour or resort vacation?
Leanne, I was looking at places I could take my grandchildren. Okay.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I know. And you go to this website, I was looking in the Caribbean. I was looking in Mexico. They have family-friendly resorts. I'm doing a lot of planning and dreaming over here, thanks to Avoya.
Oh, that's great. Well, you know what? When you're ready, you can connect with a real human. That's right. A travel advisor who helps you plan and book your vacation. And the travel advisor is matched to you based on the vacation you're interested in. So maybe it's just urban nanas over there at Avoya Travel that are planning those multi-generational travel trips. Anyway, Avoya also offers exclusive savings on top of the best deals. So here's what you need to do. Visit the Avoya website to discover your dream cruise, tour, or resort vacation. That's avoyatravel.com. AVOYA. avoyatravel.com. Thanks, Avoya Travel, for being part of the Satellite Sisterhood. So, Julie, are you making any weekender plans? As in, are you packing your base weekender bag and going anywhere?
I like how you say that, Leon, but I have the base weekender bag and I love this. I have it in sand color. It's very stylish. It has the shoe compartment underneath and it's perfect for weekend travel. I have a weekend travel trip coming up, Leon, and I've got my weekender bag, my base bag out. And I'm just going to fill it up and put my shoes on the bottom so they don't get dirty.
Well, Base has thought of everything you could ever want in a piece of luggage. It's true. I have the roller bag and we have those 360-degree sliding, gliding wheels, that cushion handle. I'm just zipping around the airport, a built-in weight indicator, washable bags for your dirty clothes, and all the interior pockets you need. And that beautiful weekender bag, which is so chic, sells out all the time. That shoe compartment in the bottom, that is key. You can bring those hiking shoes. Well, you can bring hiking shoes.
Right.
I don't hike, so I would never bring hiking shoes, but you can bring them with you in the weekend and not mess everything else up. Every piece is made to look better with miles, so you don't have to worry about it in cargo or the overhead. And Base has over 30,000 five-star reviews. We're so happy Base is on board with Satellite Sisters because right now Base is offering our listeners 15% off your first purchase by visiting basetravel.com/sisters. And Base, this is key, Base is spelled BEIS. Basetravel.com/sisters for 15% off your first purchase. BEIS travel.com/sisters. Thanks, Base, for supporting the Satellite Sisterhood. Liz, Leon, and Julie back. Well, big thanks to Charlotte Maya. Just a very moving, emotional conversation. She's amazing talking about this, but imagine how much hard work it's taken her to get to this point where she can talk about it like that. Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, how many conversations have we had about suicide? Have you had personally about suicide? Probably not enough. I mean, that's what Charlotte was saying, to learn more about her experience. I mean, it was real. That was very important.
Right.
I do feel
going
like,
from not being willing to say the S word, as she calls it, to really just calling it what it is in conversation with people. It's a very powerful change.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have seen a lot of suicides in the mid-20s, kids, like almost an epidemic of them. I just heard of, a kid that used to be on my son's soccer team, died in November. And I every time it just shatters me a little bit. I can only think of the people left behind. And but what she said is how they must have suffered alone.
Yes.
That was very powerful.
Yes.
Very powerful. This idea that if you have cancer, you get this kind of support. If you have a mental health issue, you're on your own sometimes. So it's just I thought that was a very powerful conversation. The book is really wonderful. I was an early reader of the book. And she didn't have a publisher.
You blurbed it on the back cover.
I did. She was looking for a publisher. So I said, I'll be happy to read it. And I read it. I was like, I didn't know you could write like this. I didn't know there was so much about her I did not know when I read that book. And I certainly didn't know that she could dig so deep and so powerfully. So I think there's a lot in the book for people who have experienced any kind of loss, even regardless of whether it's suicide or not. Yeah, I think you'll find some answers there.
Right. Also, in our show notes, we will have links. She mentioned the new suicide hotline that we have a 988 number nationally now. I mean, that just started in July of 22. That just started last year. So anyone across the country, you can call 988 and there will be someone there for you. I know that we had a listener who wrote in that, Katie, right? She said she works for a crisis line in Seattle and that we need to talk about mental health. And so Katie wrote in about that, but I'm sure there are other listeners we have that are also engaged in this work.
Our email address is hello@satellitesisters.com. If you want to send us an email about this show or any other topic, hello@satellitesisters.com.
And then there were a couple of other links I thought I would put in. There was a grief book recommended in the Satellite Sisters Facebook group last fall by our longtime listener, Lori Levine, who is herself a counselor. And she said she felt this book was super useful because it's organized as a series of lists that to help you think through the issues you may be going through with your own grief, whatever it is, whether it's suicide or not. So I'll put a link to that. Also, the American Counseling Organization has all kinds of resources on their website. So we will have a link to that in the show notes.
You know,
Go ahead, Jill.
I was just going to, did you want to add more resources, Leanne?
I was just going to say, we'll also have that up at the blog at satellitesisters.com if you're looking for it and you can't find it on your phone. The show notes are always at our blog.
Yeah, because we would like to keep talking about this and we'd love to hear more of your comments. But maybe as we close, I mean, Charlotte wrote something so beautiful that it's a good reminder from Charlotte that if you know someone that has experienced death, you know, just going through this, a suicide or a close family member, she wrote that in lieu of flowers, please be kind to one another. Share your struggles and fears and joys. Be present and patient in each other's journeys. And when love seems to fail, because sometimes love is not enough to ward off cancer or heart failure or mental illness, then love more, pray more, talk more, learn more, and live more.
So beautiful.
Okay, that's it for today. We're the Satellite Sisters. Don't forget, call your satellite sister.